Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And welcome to the series we'll be calling Heaven or Hell. That's right. This is a series where we'll be discussing whether or not a character would go to heaven or hell, and we'll be exploring different famous characters and controversial characters to answer that question. Now, in today's video, we'll be discussing the rules to this series and what decides whether or not a character does in fact go to heaven or to hell. Now, before you wonder why I'm only showing one side of my face, it's because I'm working on my dream impression. I know, I'm hilarious, stop it. Anyways, with all that being said, let's get into the logistics of what decides whether or not a character does in fact go to heaven or goes to hell. With the rise of the multiverse and alternate realities within media, like video games, movies, and TV shows, you can't help but wonder, does this affect characters? And more notably, does this affect whether or not a character is ultimately good or bad, or if they go to heaven or hell? And that's what we'll be discussing about today. So first, let's talk about what decides the overall outcome for a character. We know, for example, in Marvel, there are several variants of characters, and they all stem from the same idea of the original variant. However, with alternate realities, it is also possible for characters to be good compared to their evil side and nature. A good example of this is Eric Cartman, who is shown to be able to be good in both the post-COVID specials as Rabbi Cartman and also Evil Cartman from season 2 of South Park in the episode Spooky Fish. The overall behavior of all variants compared to each other should be the deciding factor in whether or not a character goes to heaven or hell. Speaking about overall behavior, what justifies whether or not a character does in fact go to heaven or hell? Now, for this, we'll be using information from the Bible and an overall general consensus of what decides whether or not someone does in fact go to heaven or to hell. And for this, we'll be using an article from Stanford, which will be linked down in the description below for y'all to all check out for yourselves. The main focus of using this article is to talk about redemption, and in our case, whether or not a character can be redeemed or not. Just because a character did something bad doesn't mean that they're ultimately evil, but then again, it is very much possible. However, for younger characters, we can use this logic mentioned in the article. In the Stanford article, it mentions even the non-religious can perhaps agree that, for whatever reason, we humans begin our earthly lives with many imperfections and with no conscientious awareness of God. We also emerge and begin making choices in a context of ambiguity, ignorance, and misperception. And behind our earliest choices lie a host of genetically determined inclinations and environmental, including social and cultural, influences. If we know there's some version of God within that universe, we can use that to help make a strong base for our claim on the character. However, it's also worth mentioning that throughout this article, it is mentioned that some human sinners cannot be reconciled. But later on, it also mentions that God's redemption cannot be thwarted forever. And according to the theology of Christian universalism, God's redemptive love extends to all human sinners equally, and God's will to save each one of them cannot be thwarted forever. So it's safe to assume that realistically everyone can be redeemed and reconciled, which works great in the series' favor. Also worth mentioning is another key factor in deciding whether or not a character goes to heaven or hell is knowing if there is a heaven or hell within that universe. We can't just automatically assume that there is a heaven or hell within that universe, because what if there's not? How can we assume whether or not they're going to go to heaven or hell, or if it's even a possibility? Fortunately, we see this in another great example of South Park through the South Park movie, which of course will not be named for obvious reasons.
Head so full of wonder, worries in the past. Could it be that you are free at last? No! Little boy, you're going to hell!
But here, we see Kenny being denied access to heaven and instead going to hell. Unfortunately, like I said, not every movie, TV show, or video game will make heaven or hell apparent within their universe. But for the series to actually work, we're just automatically assuming that every series does in fact have a universe where there's heaven or hell. Now, if there is a heaven or hell made apparent, that will help a lot with the final verdict, because we actually have knowledge of how that heaven or hell works within that universe. Now, before y'all say, oh, well, in DC Comics or in Ghost Rider, it shows Jesus literally confronting Satan. Well, yes, you are 100% correct, and I applaud you for knowing that. But for this series, we'll just be sticking to base content. This means if we were to talk about Thanos in the MCU, we specifically stick to movie clips or just movie scenes that he's in. Or if we were talking about Bowser, which is actually a video in the works. But if we were talking about Bowser, we'd only stick to video game cameos and just parts of different video games that we know about. This is just so the story isn't so convoluted and is mainly based off of general knowledge that most casual viewers would actually know. Sorry, I'm not sure if I can hear the rain or anything, but we just got a tornado warning. But fighting. But now that we have all this information gathered up, we can break this down into 3 simple rules as to what decides whether or not a character goes to heaven or to hell. So rule number 1 for this is the character needs to have a reason to be bad, and they also need a reason for them to either go to heaven or to hell. A good example is the Joker. He has a condition, which is why he acts the way he does. But this doesn't necessarily mean that just because he has a condition, he's automatically going to heaven. He's still done a lot of bad stuff. Rule number 2, if there are multiple variants or realities for a certain character, the more popular or grounded side of that character will be the final decision, pretty much, like whether or not they're more good or more bad or vice versa. That will majorly impact whether or not they go to heaven or to hell. And rule number 3, this is all my opinion. As the channel states, this is all just a bunch of baloney. And I want people to disagree with me. I want us to be able to have a discussion in the comments below where we can discuss this. So if you disagree with any of the rules I've made or any of the claims I've made throughout this video, then go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. And also in future videos, if you disagree with any of the verdicts I make, because I'm gonna make a lot of controversial verdicts on whether or not certain characters would go to heaven or hell. So I fully expect y'all to disagree with me or comment about it down below in the comments. So with all this being said, the question of whether or not the multiverse does in fact affect heaven and hell is 100% yes. I mean, 1, the series literally wouldn't work if this question wasn't true. And 2, I just can't imagine a version of heaven or hell where there are several different variants of the same person. But instead, I could just imagine a place where heaven has one grounded version or character of that grounded version of that character, if you know what I mean. And hell just has the overall bad side of that character. So it just overall depends on what outweighs whatever, good or bad. But with all this being said, I think this is an interesting topic and does give us a basis for how this series is going to work and a set of rules for the series going forward. So I really hope y'all did enjoy watching this video. Of course, if you did enjoy this video, please go ahead and leave a like. That would be greatly appreciated. I just started this channel, so having a like would be so much to me. It'll let me know you like the videos, and go ahead and subscribe. Like I said, I just started the channel, so subscribing lets me know that you really want to see more content, and subscribing will keep you notified for the next videos, which should come out every Friday. That's right, I plan on making videos every Friday discussing different characters, and if you have any ideas for what characters I should talk about during my videos, then please let me know in the comments. I'm open to audience feedback and knowing what I can do better and what y'all would like to see in future videos. Of course, this mic isn't set up, and I really hope y'all did enjoy this video. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and join me next Friday where we discuss whether or not Cartman would go to heaven or hell. Anyways, thanks so much, and bye.